Hello, everyone. Welcome to English with Master King. Today we read the story of how Carlos learned to speak English. Carlos had always dreamed of traveling the world, but there was something that held him back. He didn't know English. Every time he watched a series in that language or tried to understand a song, he felt frustrated. He knew that English was the key that would open many doors, but traditional learning methods always seemed boring and slow. He had tried vocabulary apps, online courses, and even in-person classes, but nothing seemed to work at the speed he wanted. One afternoon, while watching travel videos on YouTube, he came across a channel that fascinated him. The YouTuber, a girl named Elena, talked about how she had learned English in just 6 months through a total immersion strategy. Carlos thought about it. He wondered if he could follow a similar plan, and if in 6 months he would also be speaking English as fluently as Elena. That same night, he decided to make a radical change in his life. If Elena had done it, he could do it too. Chapter 1. The Commitment. Carlos' first step was to fully commit. He knew it wouldn't be easy and that it would require sacrifices, but he was determined. He set a goal. Within 6 months, he wanted to be able to hold a fluent conversation in English. To make sure he wouldn't lose motivation, he decided to document the entire process on his own YouTube channel. That way, every week he would upload a video explaining his progress and showing what he had learned. Not only would this keep him engaged, but it would also give him a community that would support and motivate him to keep going. Chapter 2. Total Immersion. The next day, Carlos changed all the settings on his phone and computer to English. He started following social media accounts of English-speaking influencers and stopped watching series in his native language. Instead, he started watching series in English with Spanish subtitles. His day was divided between working and learning English. Every morning, while eating breakfast, he listened to a podcast in English about topics that interested him, such as technology and video games. The first month was tough. There were many words and phrases that he didn't understand, and that frustrated him. Instead of getting discouraged, however, Carlos wrote them down in a notebook and reviewed them every night. He used a flashcard app to reinforce the words he found most difficult. He soon noticed that he was starting to recognize the same words in podcasts, and that gave him small doses of motivation. Chapter 3. Conversation. In the middle of the second month, Carlos decided it was time to practice his conversation. He joined a language exchange app where he spoke with native English speakers. At first, he was nervous and afraid of making mistakes. During his first conversations, he could barely manage to say some basic phrases like, "Hello, my name is Carlos, and how are you?" However, he practiced for at least 20 minutes every day, and over time he began to relax. One of his regular interlocutors was a young man from Australia named Jack, who shared his passion for video games. Carlos and Jack found themselves talking not only about games, but also about life in their respective countries. Although Carlos made a lot of mistakes at first, Jack was always patient and kindly corrected him. Little by little, the conversations became more natural, and Carlos began to notice that he could understand more and respond more fluently. Chapter 4: Overcoming Obstacles. Around the third month, Carlos faced an obstacle. He had been making good progress, but he began to feel stuck. Sometimes, when he watched series or listened to podcasts, he realized that there was still a lot he didn't understand, and this discouraged him. He wondered if he was really improving, or if he was just wasting his time. To combat this feeling, he decided to do something different. Every week, he set himself a personal challenge. One weekend, he wrote a short story in English. Another weekend, he recorded a video introducing himself in English and talking about his hobbies. These challenges helped him regain motivation, as he could measure his progress in a tangible way. In addition, he shared his videos with his audience on YouTube, and the supportive comments he received filled him with energy. Chapter 5: The results begin to show. By the fourth month, something magical began to happen. Carlos began to notice that he could understand movies and series without the need for subtitles. His ability to understand spoken English had improved dramatically. At work, he even began to use English in meetings with international colleagues, something that would have previously terrified him. Although he still made mistakes, he felt like he had gained a great deal of confidence. The most surprising thing was when, one day, without realizing it, he began to dream in English. For Carlos, this was a sign that his brain was really starting to adapt to the language. Also, during his conversations with Jack, he realized that he no longer had to mentally translate every word. The sentences came out more naturally. Chapter 6: The Trip to London. To celebrate his progress, Carlos decided to take a trip to London during the fifth month. This trip would be a definitive test of his English skills. Upon arriving in the city, he felt a little overwhelmed being completely surrounded by the language, but he quickly adapted. During his stay, he challenged himself to order food in restaurants, ask for directions, and hold conversations with locals. One of the most memorable experiences was when he met a group of travelers at a cafe. They spent hours talking about their experiences in different countries, and Carlos realized that although he wasn't perfect, he could still follow the conversation without a problem. This was a moment of realization for him. All his effort was paying off. Chapter 7: The Complete Transformation. At the end of the sixth month, Carlos returned home with a new confidence. He was no longer the same insecure young man who was afraid to speak English. He had transformed his life through dedication and commitment. His YouTube channel had also grown, with many people following him not only for his progress in the language, but also for his inspiration and determination. The last video he uploaded on his learning journey was a reflection on everything he had accomplished. He talked about the difficult times, the small victories, and how English was no longer a barrier, but a tool that allowed him to connect with people around the world. Carlos knew that language learning never ends. Although he had reached an advanced level in English, he would continue to practice and improve. But most importantly, he had learned a valuable lesson. With the right attitude, perseverance, and a willingness to make mistakes, any dream is achievable. Chapter 8: The new community. After his return from London, Carlos realized that his English proficiency had not only allowed him to travel, but had also opened the door to a new global community. He decided to join several online forums and groups dedicated to his hobbies. One of his biggest interests was technology, and thanks to his fluency in English, he began participating in discussions and helping others in international tech communities. At one of these forums, he met people from different parts of the world, and together they decided to create a collaborative project. The goal was to develop an innovative app that would make language learning easier for beginners. For Carlos, working on this project was proof that his English had reached a professional level. What started as a simple learning goal was turning into an opportunity to create something meaningful alongside others. Chapter 9. Challenging Advanced English. Although Carlos had mastered the basics of the language, he knew there was always more to learn. He decided it was time to take on the more advanced levels of English, those that require a deeper understanding of technical and formal language. He enrolled in online courses on technical writing and presentation skills in English, both of which prepared him for more demanding situations in his professional career. One of his biggest challenges was giving his first presentation entirely in English in front of an international audience. Nervous at first, Carlos used everything he had learned over the past few months to organize and rehearse his presentation. In the end, his effort paid off. The presentation was a success, and several audience members came up to congratulate him on his clarity and command of the language. This was another important milestone in his journey. Chapter 10. The Unexpected Friend. During the learning process, Carlos met many people through his YouTube channel and language exchange apps. One day, a comment on one of his videos caught his attention. It was from a boy named Tomas, who lived in a small town in Argentina. Tomas, like Carlos, was determined to learn English, but had fewer resources and time available. Inspired by Carlos' story, he wrote to him asking for advice. Carlos decided to help Tomas as a mentor. Together they created a personalized learning plan, and every week they met via video call to practice. Carlos realized that by teaching, he himself reinforced his own learning. Through Tomas, he discovered a new passion, teaching English to others. So, in addition to continuing to perfect his own English, Carlos began teaching online classes and guiding other people in their learning process. Chapter 11. The Culture of Language. Carlos had always known that language was not just a set of words, but also a gateway to a new culture. He decided to delve deeper into the history and traditions of English-speaking countries. He began reading classic English literature, such as novels by Charles Dickens and Mark Twain. In addition, he became interested in the history of the language, from its Germanic origins to its modern evolution. His interest in culture also led him to explore the music and art of English-speaking countries. He attended English-language film festivals and discovered that language was not only a tool for communication, but also a means of connecting with different forms of human expression. These new insights enriched his understanding of the language and made him feel more connected to the globalized world. Chapter 12. the dream come true. After 2 years of constant dedication, Carlos reached a level of fluency in English that had surpassed even his own expectations. His success had not only transformed his personal life, but also his professional career. He was promoted at work to an international position, where he traveled frequently and used English as his primary working language. Eventually, Carlos decided it was time to fulfill his original dream of traveling the world. He set out on an adventure around the world, visiting countries like the United States, Canada, Australia, and South Africa. Each place he visited was a new opportunity to practice his English, meet new people, and learn about the cultures he had studied so much. What started as a goal to learn a language had ended up transforming into a life experience that had changed him forever. Carlos had learned an invaluable lesson. Learning is never-ending, and every step along the way is an opportunity to grow and expand horizons. His journey with English was not over, but had become an integral part of his daily life. Chapter 13: Teaching the World. After having helped Tomas and many others learn English, Carlos began to realize that he had a true passion for teaching. Inspired by his own experience, he decided to launch a series of online workshops aimed at people from different parts of the world who, like him, were looking to learn English quickly and effectively. The workshops were an immediate success. Carlos developed a practical, immersion-based approach, similar to the one he had followed. He not only taught grammar and vocabulary, but also techniques for thinking in English, tips on how to overcome the fear of speaking, and the importance of consuming media in the language. His community quickly grew, and he began receiving testimonials from people all over the world, thanking him for his help in their learning journey. This global impact made him feel like he was leaving a positive mark. Chapter 14: The Multilingual Challenge. After having mastered English, Carlos decided to embark on a new challenge: learning another language. After doing some research, he opted to learn French, as he had always been fascinated by French culture. Following the same total immersion approach he used to learn English, he began watching French movies, listening to French music, and practicing with native speakers. Learning a third language was made easier by the experience he gained with English. Carlos noticed that he had developed metacognitive skills that helped him learn more efficiently. Furthermore, by sharing his progress on YouTube and with his community, he encouraged others to join the Multilingual Learning Challenge. For him, this new challenge was not only about the language, but about his personal growth and expanding his mind to new cultures. Chapter 15: Inspiring a New Generation. Carlos' impact continued to grow. His YouTube channel had become an international platform, with followers from all over the world who not only wanted to learn English, but were looking for inspiration to overcome personal barriers and achieve their own dreams. Carlos began receiving invitations to speak at conferences about language learning and personal development. At one of those conferences, he met a young woman named Sophia, who reminded him of himself when he first started his journey. Sophia was shy and felt like she could never master another language. However, after listening to Carlos, she decided to take the first step towards learning English. Inspired by his story, she committed to following in his footsteps. Carlos, now a mentor and role model, reflected on how his life had changed since he decided to learn English. He had started with a modest goal, but that goal had led him to change not only his life, but the lives of many other people around the world. He knew that the story did not end here. His learning journey would continue, as would his desire to inspire new generations to believe in the power of effort and perseverance.